Welcome to another episode of Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard here in Nashua, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about politics, of course, but we're going to get to know one of the candidates who's running for state senate in Senate
District 13.
District 13. I should know that because they sit right next to me in the Senate. Welcome, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you're from Nashua, or you live in Nashua, obviously?
I've lived in Nashua for 93 since 1993. Before that, I lived in Merrimack for a few years.
Okay.
My wife and I moved from Indiana.
Okay.
Way back when, yeah.
Yeah. So you've been here a while. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what part of Nashua? The southern part?
Yeah, we live near Riviera College.
Okay.
Off of South Main Street.
Yeah, that's a nice college. Actually, I'm doing a little paint job right up the street from there on one of the side streets. But it's a nice college. They've really developed a lot in the last few years.
Riviera means a lot to me. Before that, I went to Indiana University. That's where Beth and I went. And it had between 30 and 40,000 students. So it was a big change to be able to go to a small college where you got so much attention, you got to know people, especially the faculty.
What was your major?
At Riviera?
Yeah.
Well, I had been a newspaper reporter, and I was working as a correspondent for the Union Leader, and then I decided I better retool because newspapers aren't doing all that great.
Right.
And I majored in special education and specific learning disabilities.
Interesting. Specific learning disabilities, such as?
Specific learning disabilities is its own categories. It's for people that have average overall ability, but there's one weakness that's holding them back, say short-term memory or processing speed. People use that term a lot just as learning disabilities for any educational handicap, but it's a specific intellectual disability.
Oh, and you help them through the process.
Yeah, it's writing IEPs, tracking goals, delivering services to students, working with parents.
Yeah. So how long, you are a teacher at this point, right? Or you were a teacher?
Yeah, I worked at a local high school for many years. I left with COVID. Then I worked with nonverbal autistic adults, which I enjoyed very much for 2 years. And now I'm working as a tutor, going around wherever I'm needed.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting. So you must like what you're doing, obviously. There's a way to help people.
Yes, and that's the same reason that I'm running for Senate. Is I'm really concerned about young people. I'm eager to help them.
Yeah. Not too many people step forward to run for office in this particular ward. It leans very left, if I could say so, or Democratic. Mm-hmm. And you're running as a Republican.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to make that clear. So am I. So I'm very proud to be one. And so what made you decide to run?
Well, the short answer is my wife. Because I'd been really, really active politically, testifying at the State House. And when it looked like no one else was going to step up for a state senate, my wife really laid it on my conscience that if you're concerned about these things, then step up and give people a choice, get your message out.
Right. I think that's the message for everybody. You know, during the campaign, you hear a lot of people making complaints. Some people will make the excuse, well, if I couldn't run because I'd be mad at everybody, or there's this holier than thou. Well, for a dozen reasons why they won't run. But nothing changes until people step up to the plate. And I'm very glad that you did step up to the plate to run. It's a hard thing to do, to run for office, isn't it?
It is if you do it right.
Yeah.
And again, I'm under from my friends and my wife for making sure that I do it right. I'm spending a whole lot of time door knocking. Obviously, I don't have as big a budget as Cindy Rosenwald.
Yeah.
I don't have any money from any special interests. So it's just some hard work. It's also for me, because I'm taking a stand on some really controversial issues. Mm-hmm. I think I'm getting a lot more negative feedback than the average candidate that might shy away from those things.
And it is hard to stand out for some of the things that you believe in, but it seems to me that the other side of the aisle, who claims to be tolerant, well, then they're not so tolerant when you disagree with them.
I always laugh when I see those "hate has no home here" signs.
Yeah. Do you knock on those doors?
No, I'm very specific about which doors I've been knocking, and of course, it's just a handful of people trying to get out a whole lot of votes, and
Right.
in New Hampshire's second biggest city, so you have to be selective about getting people that are actually going to vote,
Right.
and people that aren't going to be hostile.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 60,000 people that you have to reach, or at least half of that, or a little over half. So tell me a little bit about your district in Nashua. Where are the boundaries?
Well, we have every ward, but I mean every ward except I think but yours, but 1, 2, and is it
5.
9?
5.
I'm sorry, 1, 2, and 5.
Well, yeah, those are my wards. So
okay.
and just it's geographically, so basically exit 5 to the West Hollis and exit 7. That's my side. The rest of Nashua is all you.
No, it's kind of funny because when I'm walking around near the lines, that my wife and I've got to check the maps constantly because it's so easy to step over into your ward or the sign placements too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though. Sometimes I'll put mine on the border or even in other areas just because people move around. Oh yeah, there's a sign. I was actually in Ward 3 yesterday, and it was interesting on Pennachuck Street. There, one side of the street is mine. The other side is the one that you're running for. So, yeah, it's you have to know where the boundaries are. But
Well, you also want to go to the high traffic.
Yeah.
So I put one up in Hudson as people are getting on the highway.
yeah, and I've noticed that on exit 3, you have in the medium. Actually, I saw you putting one up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and you survived. with all
it
that
helps to
traffic.
have a memorable name
Yeah,
that I don't think I need as much there. And it also helps that I only have 5 letters in my name. I imagine for the people that have 4-syllable names and try to squeeze it all in the sign.
right.
It's a
Yeah.
big disadvantage. And then I see Bill Ohm, and then he's got 3 letters, and he fills up the whole sign.
I know.
How good
right?
is that?
I love Bill. Actually, he's a great guy. Very, very analytical. Very, very even keeled. Just a wonderful gentleman, and love working with him. You know, he's been a state rep before.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So there, one of the big things that I'm hearing a lot of people, even in Hollis and in other areas, they're concerned about the education system. And this whole idea of education choice is a real big deal for a lot of parents.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the other side seems to say, well, there's only one solution for education. It's the public schools, and there's no choice. So what are your thoughts about that?
On my last job, I worked with almost all immigrants, and a lot of them were pretty recent immigrants. And I had one friend with 3 young children, and when he was coming to relieve me, he didn't know that I was involved in politics at all. And he was furious, and he was saying that he was telling me why people from other countries hate America, and he wondering if it was as dangerous as Nigeria was, where he came from, if it wasn't safer for his kids there than here because of the ideology. And one of the biggest reasons educational freedom is important is public schools have an official religion now. If you go into any public school, any public high school, you're probably going to be greeted by the flag of transgenderism, and that isn't grounded in science anywhere. A 4-year-old can diagnose himself, or if his mother catches him in his sister's play dress, that's it. And it's insane that this isn't just me making stuff up. If you can see the films from the people that run these gender clinics, and they'll tell you that a child can diagnose him or herself as soon as they can speak, and they know right after birth. And people are really frightened to send their children to the schools, or they're going to be bombarded by this stuff.
There is a nervousness, and you do hear it. I don't know if you hear it so much from some of the old networks, but you are hearing it through social media and, of course, through Fox and other news organizations, where parents are very worried what they're doing in Massachusetts and in places like that. that they're really kind of forcing that down some of the kids' necks rather than teaching them math and English and some of the classics. For some reason, they're not teaching those anymore, and they're teaching a different ideology, I guess. But critical race theory, the whole 9 yards. We addressed that issue not too long ago, so that it wouldn't be taught, but it doesn't mean it's not being practiced, And so that's an interesting perspective that we're hearing. But parents are concerned about that. They're also concerned about forced vaccinations of their children. We have a study right now, SB 288. We're addressing that issue, and we're actually coming to the conclusion, or at least make recommendations anyway as to what our findings are. And the CDC just came out and said that you should vaccinate your children against COVID, but other nations are saying under 50 you don't need it. So we're taking a good look at that. But parents are concerned. They're concerned, when they saw during the COVID period that the kids were falling behind and they didn't like some of the things that they were being taught, via Zoom. So I don't know if that's your understanding as well.
Well, I was delivering or trying to deliver special education services, direct instruction online for kids that had problems in reading and writing and math, and that didn't work too well. But a couple of things before that regarding education as a whole. One thing that I struggled with that shouldn't be political at all is that we have the standards in high school that you need to get through in order to get a diploma, supposedly. So one thing that I was really concerned about, and I still am, is students that never really learned the basic elementary school skills. They would end up graduating from high school without being able to add, subtract, or multiply with regrouping, or to consistently write and complete sentences. And these kids, and sometimes the special education system would get abused just to push kids along. And the kids would know that they didn't have these skills, that they were getting pushed along too. And that's where you would get a lot of pushback from the kids. That's where you get the class clowns, the frustration. If you've ever been in a situation, a class or a discussion where you don't know what's going on and you feel left out, that's every day for a lot of these students. And that, I don't think there's an easy answer for that, but in school, again and again, I asked for how can we reform this? There's no point in teaching someone algebra 2 if they can't calculate simple interest, or what their sales tax is going to be on something that they purchase. So that's something that needs to be reformed. Also, regarding the ideology in special education, that we know that the gender movement is targeting kids with disabilities. And I saw this happening, kids with very low abilities and who are autistic were pulled up into this ideology. And they were wondering, if you're autistic, you have trouble fitting in. And around middle school and high school, if you're a girl, I mean, it's legendary. There's movies made about it, that the social relationship among girls is just absolutely brutal. So the girls are saying, maybe this explains what's wrong with me. Or maybe I don't make too good of a girl, so I'm going to try being a boy. And so they get pulled into this, and because of our laws, I mean, it's called a conversion therapy ban. What it really means, it's a mandate that teachers and counselors can only affirm. Say, yes, you are, yes, you are. And there's nothing illegal about pushing someone down the road of puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or double mastectomy. Those things are all specifically protected in that law. But if a counselor... In
New Hampshire?
Yes. In that conversion therapy ban, it's very clear that if you're helping someone explore an identity, then this conversion therapy ban shouldn't apply. But if you had a conversation about, well, isn't it great to be a girl? Or is there anything that you like about being a girl? That's illegal. And you'll hear that from therapists if you talk to them individually. So these girls are pulled up into it. And England recently closed its biggest gender clinic, and that was one of the reasons, is that people were only affirming, and they looked at what's called the neurodiversity. And by that, they mean specifically how many of these kids are on the autism spectrum. Well, what we're seeing is about 70% of the people pulled into it, the young people, they're girls, and about half of those have autism.
Oh.
So that's another reason that that really started drawing me into politics, and I think led me into some conflicts at work too about how do we address this.
Now, you did bring up taxes just a few minutes ago and how some of these children, may be graduating without being able to do simple math. What are your thoughts about an income tax?
Well, first of all, my opponent, as you know, supported, when she was a state rep, 0.5% income tax to pay for family leave. I'm strongly...
Which was mandated, which was a mandate. And I believe it was Senator Fuller Clark who said something to the effect, well, it's not an income tax, it's a tax on wages. For real, she said that. And said, and one of the other senators went just like this. It's like, but anyway.
I'm against an income tax and a sales tax. But where I differ from a whole lot of other Republicans is, for a long time, Republicans have taken the idea that we can separate fiscal policy from public policy, including family policies. Mm-hmm. But something that we know is that...
Meaning a fiscal conservative rather than a general conservative.
Yeah.
Right. I understand.
And that might be the archetypical New Hampshire Republican. Right. They're frightened of discussing social issues. And what's funny is, last person that really pushed back on this was in 2008, Barack Obama gave a great speech about the importance of fathers and saying, we all know the statistics and keeping fathers involved in lives. And so like the union leader recently did an article on mental illness and homelessness. And of course, he talked about addiction. Well, someone who's fatherless has 10 times the chance of being in rehab than someone who grew up with a father at home.
Right.
And we don't talk about those things anymore. How can we promote keeping fathers involved in the family? If you don't treat these underlying issues, then you end up with more homelessness, you end up with more addiction, you end up with the related crime for those groups. And then you end up chasing around with the public policies, but it also means that the government steps up more and more for the 4 out of 10 kids that don't have a father in the household. Well, the government ends up being the father, and to some degree takes on the role of the husbands. And as people rely more on the government for these needs, then you can expect the government to expand to meet these needs, and they need more money.
The government always needs more money, right? That's an empty pit. And everything they touch, everything they do runs so well. I'm being facetious, but I understand exactly what you're talking about, because we're chasing a bunch of rabbits and down a rabbit hole where it starts here and then it just, wait a minute, here's the solution: keep the family together. Support fathers in the lives, and mothers, of course, in the lives of their children, and help the family stay together. Keeping the family strong, which, I don't even know if that's the government's role, is other than, making sure that they don't have policies that separate the families and encourage things like that. But I think the strength of our communities, the strength of our nation, is the families intact. And we've seen over the years where there's, what does the family look like, compared to what it was like in the 50s, or the 60s or the 70s. It just seems to be changing over and over and over again. And single parents, that's the norm. My dad actually raised 5 of us. We got out of the orphanage, and he raised 5 of us. But I was one of those kids that couldn't read. And I was being pushed, and you do feel like you are, you don't fit in. You're down on yourself. You act up as a class clown. and you basically separate yourself because, well, you're not one of the smart kids. Because they learn almost by osmosis, right? Whereas if you were always D's and F's and C's, you got pushed along. Your understanding of why am I even here? Why am I in this school? Why am I learning? That's traumatic to a kid. If they want to learn, but they don't understand why am I different? Why don't I fit in? Why is it that she's getting it? Why is it that he's getting it and they can read so much faster? Why don't my eyes focus that way? Why is it so hard? These kids go through that, and then they fall through the cracks. And so how do you ease that pain? Well, maybe you smoke a little pot, maybe you do a little of this, maybe you do a little drinking, maybe you get in a little trouble. And then all of a sudden you develop all these bad habits, and habits are a hard thing to change. And so getting back to a little bit on the school and the school choices, and I mean, you really struck a nerve with me when you said that, because you want the school system is for the kids, not the kids for the school system. And you want to help every kid achieve to their best potential. And sometimes that's an art. Sometimes they don't fit into the regular curriculum, the structure. We have a micro society right up the street here. I mean, that's an amazing thing. We have the science,
Academy for Science and Design.
And it's one of the best in the nation.
Yeah, my younger daughter went to that school, and she went on to WPI, and she's having a successful life as an engineer. So it's really important that we support school choice.
Yep.
And I believe too that when you have school choice, some of the kids go on and back into public schools, and they make the public schools better. And it also, if we have other innovation going on, it's like anything else. Public schools can pick up that too.
Sure.
I don't have much against public schools, except for, as I said, they've adapted an official religion that everyone shouldn't have to comply with. So that's a concern too. But I want to get back to what we talked about with fathers and family roles. And this gets to what you were talking about, the time when it's like middle school, high school kids, if they're not doing well, they check out, right?
Yeah.
And if they're not accepted with their other peers and their misfits, well, they find a new group to fit in with, right?
They will.
That's about the same stage where they start getting bigger and stronger than their mothers. So having a dad involved was always helpful to me, even if if they were separated, the father wasn't living at home, having a dad involved. Now, people say the government shouldn't be involved in fathers. Well, we set the message, and it goes way back, that when we went to no-fault divorces, that marriage is what it's really about, is it's for the adults, and the kids are secondary. And since then, the fatherless rate has gone up. I have no plans to try to reverse what's happened since the early 60s. But something that we can do, that was happening in Florida, and something that Barack Obama was talking about, is if we realize that good family policy is good government policy, why don't we tell these men, so a lot of them have lost their own sense of self-respect, they don't think they're needed, that they are needed, that they are important. And in Florida, they're having mentoring programs to teach fathers to be involved in their kids' lives, just teach them that nothing's more important, there's no greater honor, nothing's more fun than being a dad, whether you're married, whether you're at home with them or not. And they're even working hard for people that don't have a positive role model. And that's so important, because girls that don't have a positive role model, they'll end up often with men that treat them very, very poorly, for example. To have positive male role models in their lives. So they're training. It's something that we could do too, training men to be involved as mentors in children's lives.
Right.
So this is a really simple thing we can do. And this gets back to the education too, having when guys and girls are discouraged, having someone involved, another voice that can help out.
One thing that's coming through loud and clear is that you're very passionate about this and about serving and helping out in the community. And it's not scripted. And I love that. And it's from the heart. And I think we need more people to step up to the plate that have a heart for their community. Maybe you agree 100%, maybe you don't. But there's somebody that's genuine here before you and that wants to make a change. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but at least they're not plastic banana. And I hate to use that word, but you know, you can't judge somebody by a soundbite or by a mailer. You know, we got mailers going out left and right, but and I really appreciate you coming on the show. How do people get in touch with you anyway and help you out with your campaign?
Well, they can get in touch with me through my website, Stephen4nh.com, Stephen4nh.com. So it's
Right.
easy. So I'm easy to get in touch with there.
Yeah, and people want to volunteer, maybe hold signs or stand at the polls, or if you got some literature and knock on some doors, or get to know a little bit more about you, they can reach you through that website, I assume. Mm-hmm. Great.
Yep,
Any final thoughts? You got a minute left, so.
I'm also easy to find on Facebook too. So let me see what the important thing that I can say about a minute is that New Hampshire has the second oldest mean population in the United States. Mm-hmm. We also have the lowest fertility rate in the United States. And if you're a fan of The Handmaid's Tale, maybe you think that's great. But what I see is young people, we keep on saying, how can we attract young people? Or where do young people come from? And people are deciding that this isn't a good place because of housing prices, and maybe they're afraid of what's happening in schools. This isn't a good place to have and raise children. So we keep on talking about how do we get young people like 20s out of college. We need to make New Hampshire more family friendly. And there's simple things we could do with housing and with schools that would make it more attractive.
Great. One more time on your website.
Stephen4nh.com.
And remember, November 8th is the day. Please show up at the polls. Every vote does count. I promise you, they count. And with that, thank you for watching Speaking with the Senator. If you want to come on the show, you're very welcome to. We'd love to have you. We don't ask you if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever you are. You can come on the show and talk about what's on your heart. So until next week, thanks for watching.